So we'll call the school board portion of the meeting to order at 6:02. Go ahead, Vicky.
And I'll call the Dover Select Board meeting to order at 6:02. Sarah, will you take a couple of quick notes?
Sure.
Thank you.
So,
Get the right piece of paper in front of me.
so I'm going to start with the school board. I'd like to entertain a motion to move into exec. Oh, Mark, we should let anybody in who's in the waiting room.
There's nobody in the waiting room.
Okay. So we're recording, right?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so can I get a motion to move into executive session for a legal issue?
So moved.
Okay, so Mark, you moved. Is there a second?
Well,
I'll second.
Does the select board need to officially?
Hang on,
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
will. Hang on, Sarah. Okay, Dwight, you seconded it. All those, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Here's
So-
no, the ayes have it.
I'd like to entertain a motion to go into executive session with the River Valley School District. Somebody want to make that motion?
I'll move to go into executive or move to, am I moving to open our meeting or go into executive session?
Go into executive session
Move to go to an executive session with the school board.
Second.
at 6:03 or
Who's the
6:04.
second?
Second.
Joe?
Joe second.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Mark, Rich, a community, Brattleboro Community TV, we're gonna boot you, buddy. Yes, Mark, I don't know who it is, but
They
Probably
have to
Rick.
go, right?
yeah, he's gonna go.
Yeah.
He'll let people in from the waiting room.
Well,
I'm gonna dial in
session.
on my phone because I'm going home.
Okay, so let's have a motion to adjourn at 6:48.
So
The
move.
select board. Second,
Second.
Who seconded? Scott?
Scott, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night. Have a good.
Thank
school
you, everyone.
board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vicky,
What?
what do I need to do with these notes?
We're gonna give them to Jeanette.
To Jeanette? Okay.
Mhm.
I can do
So
that.
on the school side, we came out of executive session for a legal issue. We're gonna be continuing with our legal issue on February 2nd at the select board meeting at approximately probably 6:40 to 6:45.
I'm not sure about that, Rich, so,
Okay,
but
well, you'll let me know. So
Yep.
well, as soon as I know, we'll get that added to our, we'll get that warned for our meeting
okay,
on the school.
thanks.
So we're
Good
going.
night.
Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
So Rich, are you going into a regular school board meeting now?
Yeah.
At 7:00.
Okay, so we gotta get
Is
out of
this
here.
the same? Is it the
No,
same
just
Zoom?
stay. It's the same Zoom, right?
All right,
Mark?
I'll stay. Just let Mark know I'm probably just gonna stay for a little bit,
No,
whatever.
that's fine.
So
So,
it's
Thank
same,
you.
yeah, it's the same.
so, Mark, we're going to, let's just reset, let's just take a break.
Okay.
So, but I think because we're in open session, we gotta let whoever is in the waiting room.
Everyone that was in the waiting room is in,
Okay.
and I will just put a note up on the screen that regular meeting will start at 7.
Yeah, we're in recess, but let them in. Bye, Laura. I got 2 Lauras. It's like double trouble. Okay, so everybody can take a quick breather and we'll reconvene. We'll restart at 7:00. Okay, folks?
Sounds good to me.
Everyone mute themselves if they're going to stay in.
Peter, can you hear me? So listen, can you just make a note that at 6:03, we call the meeting to order? And then at 6:03, Dwight moved to go into executive session for a legal issue with the select board, the Dover Select Board. And I'm sorry, Mark moved and Dwight seconded the motion. And there was no discussion, all voted in favor. And then at 6:45, by unanimous consent, we came out of executive session.
I heard 6:40 when you came out.
Yep, 6:40, I'm sorry. I can't even read my own writing. And that there was no decisions, but the school board will be meeting with the Dover Select Board at their February 2nd meeting at a time to be determined, and that will be warned. And then the board is in recess until 7 o'clock, which I think is now. So we have all our members, right? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is Rick here? I don't see Rick. Why don't we go ahead and call the meeting to, why don't we cancel our recess and we'll move right into the agenda. First item on the agenda is additions or deletions to the agenda. If nobody has a problem under old business, I'm gonna just switch the annual meeting discussion with the waiting and recalculating. I believe Dr. Backus, our moderator, and Amy McLean are gonna be here for that discussion also. Is there any other additions or deletions from anybody? Hearing none, I'll move into members of the public, and then members of the staff. Remember, you can speak on any item. We have a 4-minute maximum. Action may not be able to be taken immediately, and written correspondence prior to a board meeting always allows the board to be better prepared and possibly make a decision. Is there anything from any member of the public?
No hands, no hands.
Okay. And how about members of the staff? Is there any comments or discussion, anything from a member of the staff?
No hands currently.
My screen is flashing a lot, Mark, so I'm not sure exactly what's going on. Okay, then let's move into review and approve the minutes of the January 11th, 2021 meeting. If I can entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Okay, Mark moved. Do I have a second?
Second, Dwight.
Okay, Dwight seconds. Mark, any comments?
No, not this week.
Dwight, anything?
No, you good.
Okay, is there any discussion? Anybody on the board or any members of the public staff? Hearing none, I guess all those in favor of approving the minutes of the January 11th, 2021 meeting. Peter, good job. Are you all set to move forward?
Yep, it's all marked approved already.
Okay, all those in favor, please signify so by saying aye.
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 Is there any opposed? It appears as though the ayes have it. The ayes have it. They're approved. Correspondence. I do have one thing for correspondence. I did get a email from Karen Davis, who is either the chair or co-chair of the Wardsboro Select Board, and they wanted to know about school district meeting, what we were going to do, because this year it's in Wardsboro. And I told her that we had moved ours till April, sometime in April, and we were going to be discussing it tonight. She did have a little bit of a concern because she wanted to get something in the Bucketville News. So she just was going to put in there a brief thing to Wardsboro people so that they knew that town meeting in Wardsboro was not going to be held in March at the normal time, but they're looking to do an in-person meeting sometime later in the spring. So she asked if I had anything we wanted from the school board, and because we didn't have the meeting, I just asked her if she wanted to add that the River Valley School meeting is scheduled for April this year. However, the school board will be discussing this at their next meeting. We'll keep the Wardsboro Select Board informed as of this year's meeting for the River Valley schools. So that is, that was the only correspondence we had. And I see that, as I said, we're going to move school district annual meeting. And this is not what we're going to do for articles. This is just about the meeting itself. And I see we have Dr. Backus there as DO Vermont Zoom 2. And we do have Andy here somewhere. I saw him. He's moving around. Stop moving, Andy. There, over in the corner. So let's, if everybody has no problem, under old business, school district annual meeting. So this year we'd scheduled our annual meeting. Last year we scheduled it, I'm sorry, for April 13th, I believe. Somebody help me here, please. Yeah, April 13th is our annual meeting. So we have not canceled it yet, or we not postponed it, but the legislature did give us the ability to move that if we want to go later into, if we want to go later into the spring. We do have to report to the state of Vermont our budget by the end of May 30th, I believe, or June 1st. And if we wait until May 30th to have a vote, or May 28th, and something gets turned down, it doesn't give us time to rewarn another meeting. And then statute states that our budget becomes a percentage of our previous budget. So it would behoove us to allow us enough time to have another meeting if we have to. I think Andy's not argued, but Andy has championed to make sure that we do an in-person meeting to discuss the budget. I think everybody has kind of agreed to that. So I think maybe we should start with that. Is there anybody who does not think that we should try to have a live meeting? Go ahead, Mark.
I'm vehemently against it. COVID is not going away. Many of us won't be getting vaccines in the near future. We don't yet know how effective the vaccines are. I think it is, while I much prefer an in-person meeting, I think it just isn't practical for this year.
Okay. Any other thoughts from anybody? Members of the public, staff, Dr. B, Andy, board members?
Jeremy, Bob,
Go ahead, Dr. B.
I have just finished an extensive review of the world's vaccines. I've done it over the last week. I would disagree with the gentleman who just spoke, saying that, questioning the effectiveness. I believe they are effective, but I also completely respect his desire not to engage in what he might feel are challenging circumstances for his health by coming to an in-person meeting. And I don't think he's alone in this.
Okay. Any other comments or thoughts from anybody else? Go ahead, Kate.
So what would it look like to do an in-person meeting? How many people would you assume would come, and how would you do it? What does that look like?
So what we've kind of been bouncing around a little bit is in the other board meetings is to maybe rent a tent so we could have an outside meeting so that we could definitely do social distancing. We would space chairs, 6 feet apart. People in groups, like if you and your husband were coming to vote and you're in the same household, you can sit, closer to each other. We would require everyone to wear a mask. We wouldn't be passing anything out. If anything we passed out would be a single use item. It would be like we would share a book or pass pictures around. And we really haven't, other than that, we haven't really discussed it. We also have the ability, Mount Snow has offered some different rooms that they have that could host, up to 50 to 100 people. I think our biggest school district meeting so far, since we've been River Valleys, and people can correct me, I don't think we've been over 50 people yet at a school district meeting.
Jeremy, it's Bob again. If you're going to use a tent, you should have an open-sided tent. It should be open to the air completely. And the distancing I would recommend would be 10 rather than 6.
Yeah, and that's, again, that's, I think, details, but that was one of the reasons we were thinking too, that maybe we wanted to push it off more into May when it's, and we can have snow in May, I know, but, have it a little bit warmer. The other thing, we need to get heaters, and that's why the Wardsboro Select Board was interested in what we were doing also, because they thought if we were going to meet and rent a tent, then maybe the two groups, the select board and the school board could rent a tent together. One use it one night, one use it the night later, or a couple days later. So, but I think our important thing we got to decide now is, are we going to have a live meeting, or are we going to have a ballot, a vote on our articles and budget by ballot? So Mark, let me just see if there's anybody else, and then I'll go back for round 2. Is there anybody else who'd like to weigh in first round? Go ahead, Dwight.
Just more of a question, if we can, can we discuss what the virtual meeting would look like as well? I mean, will it be where we'll be actually voting on the day of, or I know there's also an option to have an informational meeting prior to it where we can discuss and then have Australian ballot. Is there basically like 3 options, or is it what's the virtual option?
So we're going to be required to hold 2 prior meetings. That's in our articles of agreement. So we agreed to hold one in the town in which the meeting's going to be first, and then a second one in the second town. Those will have to be virtual, so those probably will not be live meetings. I don't think we're talking a virtual meeting, we're talking a ballot. So what would happen is, remember last meeting, Andy discussed that you would just, everybody would come in, they would get a ballot, he could get the counter programmed to handle the votes, and it would either be a yes or no vote. So here's the budget, this is how much we want to expend on education, and they can vote yes or no. And there's no discussion, and that's the only way we could do it. I don't think, Andy, we discussed the virtual meeting, but can we do a virtual meeting?
I don't believe we can. You mean like a Zoom meeting?
For the annual meeting, yes.
Yeah, I don't believe that's possible. It's not one of the options you're given by this legislation, this new legislation.
Okay, that was my question. Thanks, Andy.
Are you good, Dwight?
Yeah, that's great. Perfect.
Okay, anybody else? If not,
It's Rick. I just want to say, to Mark's point, it is tough to have an in-person meeting. I understand that in this day and age, but with the increases that we're looking at in the tax rate, which will probably be part of what we're presenting, I just think it needs a little bit of explanation unless we have some major changes between now and then. And we're looking at some major tax increases, I think, for folks. And I hate to get voted down without any discussion as to why we have come to the conclusions that we've come to. I mean, I think, Rich, you made some great points along the way that a lot of the things that are in the budget are things that have been in the budget that the voters have told us they wanted in the budget. But without any discussion, I think it's going to be difficult for people to pass on a yes, no vote without any discussion. That's just my 2 cents on that issue.
and I think that kind of goes back to where Dwight was too. Even if we do the informational meetings, when we do the informational meeting, the budget will already have to be set. So we wouldn't, if we at the informational meetings got feedback that, something was too high or something was too low, it's too late there to adjust it. So Mark, you'd be next.
Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, let Mark go, and then you can have a second turn, Dwight.
So I was just going to say, and I don't remember what act number it got, but the legislation that was just signed by Governor Scott does provide the ability to mail out Australian ballots to everybody, and the cost will be covered through the Secretary of State's office with money that's been allocated to them from the Corona Relief Fund. And as far as the virtual possibility of a virtual meeting goes, from listening to meetings of the Senate Government Operations Committee, their belief is that it is untested, but that people probably could, even though legislation doesn't specify it, that people probably could have virtual meetings if they wanted to. I don't personally think it's a great idea, but and that's not written anywhere. That was just their belief.
Right.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I have attended meetings where they do have voting options on it, but I'm not suggesting, Andy, that you would have to try to organize that. It doesn't seem very easy. So yeah, I think obviously the informational meetings we're going to have are going to be virtual, and I think the good news is that we've had great participation at these meetings, and so getting back to what Rick said, hopeful that we'll have even more participation in the discussion. But the question comes down to the actual vote, and I guess I have a question too. So let's say we do go Australian, and let's say the budget gets shot down, we would need to hold another meeting. Could that meeting then be in person, or we already set up how we have to organize the follow-up meeting to the
No,
meeting?
that could be a in-person meeting if we decide to do that. Right.
Okay.
And what Mark brought up about the mailing the ballots to, remember, that was something Andy talked about the last meeting. So that would be a second decision. If we decide that we want to have a meeting, a ballot vote, then we have to decide, do we mail ballots to everybody, or do we just, you have to request a ballot or go to the voting booth on that day, or request an absentee ballot. I believe that's what you brought up last time, right, Andy?
Yeah, I want to go back a little bit. I wasn't listening to what you were saying, except Dwight's point about a budget getting shot down at an Australian ballot and warning another meeting to consider a different budget. And your understanding is that meeting could be in person?
That's been my understanding, yes.
Would you,
Even present
you'd
the
have
same
to
exact
vote,
budget again.
you'd have to vote to do that?
I believe so, yes.
And you could do that? All right, that's news to me.
That's
but-
my understanding from
Okay.
discussing with other towns when I was on the VSBA board, who actually had budget shot down, that they could do that.
Okay,
It changed, Andy, and it's something I guess we would have to look into to be sure.
yeah,
But
okay.
it would be, if we decide to have an in-person meeting, that's a moot point. And then if we decide to do a ballot vote, then that would be something we would have to look into, what to do if it gets turned down. So I think our first issue is we need to decide if we want to try to do an in-person meeting or not. So I've heard, a couple different thoughts. I think we need to make a decision tonight so we know to move forward, or at least that's the first decision or the first step in our decision-making process. Go ahead, Mark.
So I'm going to move that we have an Australian ballot annual meeting on April 13th.
Okay, so we have a motion to have an Australian ballot vote on the budget and articles on April 13th. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Peter, do you have the motion all set?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mark, you get first discussion. You made the motion, sir.
So while it is not what I think any of us prefer, this is not a standard year. And I think we should err on the side of safety. I know from personal perspective, I would not be able to attend an annual meeting if it happens in, April or May. But that's just me. So
Okay, thank you, Mark. Dwight, you get second comment.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree. I'm in favor of this motion. I think we can have very good participation leading up to it if we have our 2 meetings virtually. Hopefully we'll be able to really get a clear understanding of what the voters want. And I know there's a lot on the table with increases and that kind of thing. But I also think I'm worried we won't get enough participation at a live event to have a real clear understanding of what the vote is either. I think that may not be what we're looking for. I know the floor debate is excellent, but how many people we're going to have show? So I worry about that too. So based on that, I would agree with the motion.
Okay, is there any other discussion from any board? Dr. B and
Richard,
yeah, go ahead, Laura.
I apologize. I'm driving home, and so my cell service dropped off. I did not hear if either Andy or Dr. Backus made a recommendation to us.
I don't think they made a recommendation, but I'm asking them if they'd like to weigh in. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah. So most of you have heard me on this before. I believe that if it's at all possible for us to have a floor vote on the budget, we should try and do that. I think that Rick Thorpe's point is well taken. I looked at the budget that was sent out for this meeting. If we're talking about those kinds of increases, the way our democracy works at town meeting, something like that really benefits from all the pieces of the decision-making puzzle that happen prior to the vote. When a board can stand up, everybody who's going to vote is in the room. A board can stand up, explain the situation. People can make amendments to the motion. People can raise objections. Those objections can be weighed by everybody in the room. They can be questioned by everybody in the room. And you can come to a good decision. That's the beauty of town meeting. And Australian ballot destroys all of that. And I'm going to read you a quick quote from a book called All Those in Favor by Susan Clark and Frank Bryan. A couple of professors, local Vermont professors, came out in 2005. And it has fantastic ideas about town meeting and annual meetings and how to increase participation and what works and what doesn't. And Australian ballot is typically the death knell of your town meeting. You go to Australian ballot and budgets get shot down a lot more often when you go to an Australian ballot. And with an increase like you're talking, that's a definite possibility. The Australian ballot hurts town meeting. In a well-intentioned effort to include more people in decision-making, an increasing number of Vermont towns are destroying their town meetings in the process. This is Susan Clark, Woodbury College, and Frank Bryan, University of Vermont. All Those in Favor is the name of the book. By plucking that decision, that vote out of the process, you destroy the decision-making process, and you exacerbate that infinitely when you mail ballots to every voter. Now you're inviting people who have no intention to go to your public meetings, to your informational meetings, to make decisions based on no more than the fact that they got a tax bill last year and they didn't like it. The question is nuanced, and the problem, in my opinion, with the discussion has to do with national politics. When you talk about national politics and the unfortunate truth that people of color have been disenfranchised, and that participation is a good thing, and then you come to a discussion about town meeting, and in the back of your mind, participation is a good thing. Let's increase participation. You know, let's get more ballots out there. Let's get more people participating in the process. It's not as simple as that. The process is not simply the number of votes. Voting is the last little piece of the puzzle. Everything that goes before it makes the decision good or bad. Plucking the vote out of that process is difficult. And I will say that we are in extraordinary circumstances, and it may be that you need to have an Australian ballot vote this year. I'm against it. I think you should push off your meeting as long as possible so the weather can be as nice as it is going to get, you know, into May perhaps. Have a big open-sided tent. Hopefully you won't even need the tent. Get a PA system, and let's try and make a good decision and not simply a decision that has the quantifiable numbers behind it. That's all I got.
Thank you, Andy. Dr. B, you want to weigh in on this?
I'm in total agreement with Andy.
Okay. Is any other person hasn't spoken to this yet? Would anybody else like to speak? Okay, any second?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Laura.
Again, I apologize. Was the latest date that we could push this off to identified?
It could probably be May sometime. You want to leave yourself enough time to have a revote.
Right.
So, and we have to submit by June 1st or May 30th, 31st to the state our budget. If not, they just use a percentage of our previous year's budget. And the state just gives it to us, and then we could still try to vote on something, but it's a lot more difficult to get it through.
Thank you.
Okay, Mark, go ahead. I don't see anybody else wanting to speak.
How long do we have to allow between a warning and a meeting if we have to go to a revote?
Well, you're going to need 30 days to warn it, and you're also going to need time to adjust whatever you're warning. So, you know, you're probably looking, you could probably sneak it through in 35, 40 days.
So we're talking about the latest possible date being the last week of April.
Yeah,
Correct.
remember this was kind of this discussion we had last year at the school district meeting when we were trying to get another date in. Andy, I don't think we're not allowed to go less than 30 days for a meeting like that, are we?
I think the warning needs to be 30 days. The fact that you could choose to have a floor vote at that next meeting might help, because if you want to coordinate ballots, that might take more time, but 30 days I think is the minimum. Now, procedurally, voting down a budget at a floor vote, you could reconsider that maybe, Dr. B, at that meeting, could you reduce line items if the budget fails and reconsider that at the same meeting?
I'm not sure of that, Andy.
I mean, neither.
But the thing is we could, at the meeting, somebody could make a motion to reduce the budget.
Yes, right.
And then that could be handled at that time.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
So I just want to say, Andy, I completely respect your opinion. And in fact, I agree with it, just not this year. And I think that this year, the risk of it being voted down, however ballots get sent out or not sent out, is more important than the health risks to having an in-person meeting. So like I said, it's just a 1 year.
Kate, did you want to make a comment?
I was, I think Laura already asked what I was going for, just the timeline and what we really had to work with. But it really, you know, this is a very unique year, and it just seems really funny still to try to do a large group gathering in person with so many different households commingling when we're being so cautious with the kids. So that just feels funny.
So the other thing though too is so the motion made is not to have it on a specific date, because we're allowed to change that date. So let's understand that if you vote for this, then the next discussion should be the actual date. Why are you shaking your head, Mark?
Because my motion did include it. It was April 13th.
Include what? I'm sorry.
The motion included April 13th as a date, which is our currently scheduled meeting. So that would have to get
To have a
amended.
ballot, okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is if you vote for this, then it will be a ballot on that date. But if we don't vote for it, then we're going to have an in-person meeting and we can change the date. Do you agree with that, Mark? Okay.
Yes.
So is it as clear as mud to everybody?
Rich, I wanted to add one more thing.
Go ahead, Rick.
We do not have a meeting. We don't really know how the voters feel. So let's say the budget gets shot down. We don't know what we have to come back with. You know what I mean? What were people upset with? Why didn't they vote for it? I mean, we're getting no feedback really from the taxpayer or from the citizen of the town as to what they would like to see cut if they think it's too high, or where they would like to see more money put. I mean, we would be going into a second round of rebudgeting with no direction whatsoever as to what the voters wanted us to do. So from a perspective of where we should cut the budget or what would be acceptable to people, we've had no feedback. So we really wouldn't know what direction to take. So I believe that makes it a little more difficult too.
Okay. Thank you, Rick. So if we, are you guys ready to vote? If there's no further discussion, Peter, could you please reread the motion?
Got a long way to scroll here, hang on.
No, you muted yourself, Peter.
How's that?
Good.
Move to hold a meeting to vote on the budget and the articles on April 13th by Australian ballot.
Okay, everybody's clear on the question? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please signify so by saying aye.
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 Okay, those opposed, please signify so by saying
No.
Nay.
Okay, so the vote's 3-2. The chair is going to choose to vote with the nays to create a tie. So we're going to go back to the drawing board and have a discussion. So the motion fails to carry, it's a push.
But the chair
Mr.
votes
Chair.
the majority.
Yes, Laura.
I apologize. I didn't mean to yell. I had taken you off mute and I was trying to get my husband to stop talking.
Okay, tell him shut up. So, the motion fails. Would somebody like to make another motion?
Richard,
Yes, Laura.
or I don't know if Andy and Dr. Backus could tell us, is it possible that we delay? Can we delay the vote on when to have town meeting?
We could for a little bit. But, you know, they're gonna need, no matter what we do, whether we do a ballot or whether we do a live meeting, there are warning requirements, and then there's gonna be requirements to prepare everything. Like Andy said, if it's gonna be a ballot, it's gonna take him a little bit longer than the 30 days just to get the ballot ready and be able to get it out. And there'll be some other decisions, so.
If I may, Andy, if we were to have an Australian ballot on May 15th, or an in-person meeting, well, I guess we'd have an Australian ballot anyway, either way, right? Just what's on it, right? So.
Yeah, the main question about the Australian ballot is
Is what's
whether
on
it will
it.
include your budget.
Right.
You know, and the other public questions, the articles.
So if we
Um,
were to delay, could we delay this decision until, what would happen if we said, we're going to make this decision the first week of March, when we would normally have town meeting, or the last week of February, as to whether or not we will do an in-person or a strictly Australian ballot?
So if you pushed your meeting if you pushed your meeting to the beginning of May, let's see, was that your question, or are you?
My question,
wondering-
sorry, I was kind of tripping over myself a little bit. If we pushed making a decision on whether or not we would do this in person or strictly Australian ballot until the last week of February or the first week of March, what would you say, what would be the consequences of pushing our decision out? So, 4 weeks, 5 weeks.
I'm
So
looking at a
basi-
calendar. If you do the first March 1st, which would be the first Monday, you're 6 weeks plus a couple days from the April 13th meeting anyways. That 6 weeks gives you enough time, Andy?
So I want to say never, depending on the Australian ballot and whether or not you want to mail ballots to everybody, right? That could probably work. If you want to mail ballots to everybody, that's a question mark. I've never done anything like that before. So I would need to nail down some timelines with some printers and maybe mailing houses as far as getting those ballots out on time. But if you take mailing ballots to everybody off the table, 6 weeks, I should be able to get it together in 6 weeks. You have to warn your meeting 30 days prior to the meeting at the latest. And with a couple extra weeks in there to get your warning nailed tight and for me to understand what I need to do for balloting. I think 6 weeks is, I think I can do it in 6 weeks without much of a problem, with the caveat that if you're going to mail ballots to everybody, there's a question mark there since I've never done it before.
So if we were to do it March 1st, I'm hearing you say, you would feel like you'd have enough time if it was in person with the regular Australian ballot, not that you could do that in 6 weeks. And that puts us to April 13th, which was Mark's first motion. And so do you think that an additional 2 weeks to make sure that we could get something printed if we decided to go with mailing everybody a ballot, which would put us at May 1st. So I'm trying to think of what is the latest possible moment that we can make this decision and not have total chaos to give ourselves the most flexibility.
Okay, it depends on what date you're gonna have your meeting, right? So, if you're gonna have your meeting on April 13th, is that the idea? Then I can say, all right, make your decision 6 weeks before that. I guess I'm not quite, I think you need to decide when you want to have your meeting in order to come up with a date when you need to make this decision by. Whatever date you decide to have your meeting, 6 weeks, I think, is plenty of time prior to that date. And if you're gonna mail ballots to everybody, I just don't know. I've talked to printers, but there's a lot of towns in Vermont thinking all of these same things. There's only so many printers. I don't want to promise you anything I can't deliver. And it's all new. So I want to say I could do it in 6 weeks. And I want to say I could find some vendors to work with that could make that happen. But, you know, it's just a big unknown, actually.
So,
You know?
Laura, Amy, let me just cut in a little bit. So our next two meetings should be February 1st and February 15th. Obviously, everybody knows February 15th is a holiday, so we won't be meeting then. If we meet February 1st, it's next Monday, so it only gives us a week. So I don't know if we could meet the 8th and the 22nd and postpone this decision until that time, and that would still give, if we decide on the 8th if we decide on the 8th, that gives Andy actually 7 weeks. If we keep with the April 13th date, if we do the 22nd, it gives them, you know, again, an extra week, 7 weeks, or I'm sorry, if we do it on the 8th, it's 9 weeks. I don't know, you know, again, like Andy said, no, if people are going to meet on town meeting day, but by you're sending out ballots, you know, we're probably in good shape because there wouldn't be that many people. But if a lot of people decide April 13th or the middle of April, then it could be a challenge for that. So we don't have to make a decision tonight. I think we are safe unless anybody else says no. I think we're safe to wait till at least February. Again, if you're going to change the meeting date and you want to meet sometime at the end of April, you know, we could push that into March and still give Andy, if we made the decision the 1st of March and push it off to the end of April, that would still give Andy 8 weeks, you know, 2 months to decide. So we can push it off a little bit, but we aren't going to be able to push it off forever. And we're probably going to have to make a decision within the next, I would say, 1 month, 4 to 6 weeks, we should make a decision. And Andy should give you time, I would believe, right? That's 6 or 7 weeks. He's shaking his head reluctantly.
Yeah. Richard, can I just ask one more question?
You can ask all the questions you want till I take the floor away from you and give it to somebody.
Yeah. Okay. It's for Dr. Backus. And I just want to ask if you think we're buying anything by delaying, or, I mean, do you think it's, yeah. I mean, I'm not expecting this situation to be dramatically improved in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And so, you know, do you think that there's value to delaying this decision? And are you willing to say so?
Yes, I do. I think there is value in it. Every week that you have more data about where we're headed and how we're heading it is critical. And I don't see how you can fail by waiting and weighing this decision a bit more.
Thank you. I'm done, Richard. Thank you.
Okay, and just on top of that, Rick's and my concern about presenting a budget with an increase by Australian ballot can also be covered by delaying it, because we can also spend more time trying to sell it and get it out there and letting people know about it and seeing what people think. And if there's a lot of pushback, even though I get nervous about judging things prior to an actual vote or meeting, I mean, that could help us too. But hearing that, is everybody willing to put this decision off until a future meeting?
I am.
Okay, Kate, and then Mark.
So I'm willing to put the decision off, but I like the idea of maybe doing some type of workshops or, some type of, I don't know what would reach people and what would get to people. Just sharing that the budget is out there, that there are increases, how it really impacts people, what it breaks down to. I don't know if that would help sell it, or if, maybe we go a little grassroots and people just talk to different folks that they know within their communities and, share that it's out there. But we could really bring some attention to it. But I think, yeah, meeting in person is tricky. And I think giving us more time to look at the data would be nice. I know it puts Andy in a really tough spot though, because I work with some printing industry elements in my world. And I know that that timeline is really narrow and that's hard for Andy. So I don't want to load Andy either. So that's a tricky one.
Andy, will you be able to check with some printers and kind of give us a rough idea so like you could say, hey, if I needed something for April 13th, what would be the drop dead date you would need it by? And
Or
then
May 1st.
I was going there, Laura, just mellow for a second.
So yes, I can talk to these folks and try and figure out how long everything will take. Yeah, I can do that. So the more information I have, the better. As far as what date you're talking about.
Can you use April 13th and May 1st? Ask them for those two dates.
Okay, April 13th and May 1st.
April
Okay.
13th is a Tuesday, Richard, and May 1st is a Saturday.
Oh, well, you said beginning of May, Laura. I'm sorry. So May 1st, May 4th, April 13th, May 4th.
April 13th and May 4th. Okay. And numbers for mailing ballots to everybody.
Well, just how long you need, how long they need to be able to print the ballots, because you're going to have to make enough ballots whether we mail them or they need to be available for if everybody showed up to poll, right?
Well, I suppose basically I won't need as many ballots if we don't mail them to everybody. If we don't mail them to everybody, we're still going to have an election on a specific day where people can show up to the polls. So if I mail ballots to everybody, that's the whole checklist plus whoever might show up without a ballot that they were mailed. If I'm not mailing ballots to everybody, then the whole checklist is going to be more than enough. So I'll go with like the whole checklist plus a bunch, or I can tailor it a little bit better. But the printer is not actually what I'm more worried about. Mailing ballots to everybody, necessitates a printer. If we don't mail out ballots to everybody, I could conceivably print them on my copy machine and we could count them by hand. If we mail ballots to everybody, we're going to want to configure a tabulator, print them on the proper stock, professionally, but then they need to be mailed as well. And that's, there's time involved there for the vendors. So there's a number of things that, you know, I have to print envelopes. Do the envelopes need, you know, individual names and addresses on them? There's probably 2,000 when you combine Dover and Wardsboro. You know, there's a number of variables depending upon exactly how you want to do this. And I can come up with as many numbers as, you know, the patience of these folks who are all working very hard on town meetings right now will get me. You know what I mean? Like, how much time do they have right now? But I will try and get as detailed a numbers as you can. But the more information I have, the easier those numbers are going to be to get.
Okay, so
So-
for right now, Andy, let's use April 13th and May 4th as the two different dates.
Okay.
And then if you can, so for the next meeting, if we can know what our drop deads are, then if the drop deads are, you know, the 1st of March for either one of them, or both of them, or the earliest one, then we know we have to make the decision by then. Because, you know, we can argue, I mean, if we were to have a discussion about whether we're going to mail ballots to everybody, if we were to do ballots and we decide to have a meeting in person, we probably wasted another 2 hours a night having that discussion on if we're going to mail ballots to everybody. Just, I think, you know, it's kind of like what came first, the chicken or the egg. So, yeah, if you could just do those two dates and then we can adjust from there, it would give us, you know, a guideline. Does that work for you?
Yeah, I'll try and get you the dates when you need to make decisions by for those two dates, depending upon whether you're going to mail ballots to everybody or not. I'll try and think of all the variables and try and give you those dates.
Okay. I got, if you guys will indulge me for one more second, I want to, and Dr. B, you don't have to answer this, and Andrew, you don't have to answer this, and the rest of the board, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. Mark made a pretty powerful statement earlier. He said, if we have an in-person meeting, I'm not going. Dr. B and Andy, if we had an in-person meeting, would you guys attend?
I would, for sure. I'm not in any high risk category. I'm not worried about my own health. And I think that as long as you follow the guidance that the state has given, there's no reason we shouldn't meet. You know, if you can't follow the guidance, you shouldn't meet. But that's why the guidance is there. If you can follow it, meet.
Well, I think also there are people who are not sure that the guidance is accurate, and their wish not to go should be respected.
Mm-hmm.
No,
I happen to agree with you, Andy, that if you take the proper precautions and stay with the science, we should be okay. But I really want to make sure that people don't get shamed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's why I said, if you guys want to answer, and if you didn't want to answer, and I appreciate Mark, you know, saying that, because it does add a different light to the discussion. Is there any board member that would not attend? Does not feel comfortable? If you're comfortable saying it, if you don't want to say it, then, you know, that's fine too.
I
Richard?
would have, oh, go ahead.
Go
Laura.
ahead, Kate. We'll go Kate, then Laura.
Okay.
White.
I would really have to put some serious thought into it. And that's where I was asking the questions on what you were doing, like what the theory was behind the meeting, where it would be held, what type of open air flow we had, because everything that we've been doing up to this point has been, I've been following safety guidelines to keep children in school. And for me to go to a meeting with many different people in many different households feels really odd to me. So that would be my risk factor, and I'd have to seriously consider all of the factors before saying yes, I could go.
Laura?
So I would just note, so I would probably go, but I would note that we have citizens and voters who would usually go that might also not go, that may have underlying health conditions. So I have that in my head.
Dwight?
Yeah, I would have to think about it some more. I won't be able to decide now, but I agree. I mean, it's so, in the past, if you didn't come to a meeting, shame on you that you didn't vote for the budget. But now we don't know. It's still an unknown. We don't know how many people are going to show up, and they're not just showing up because they're disengaged. They're not showing up because they don't feel it's a health risk. So, I appreciate what Andy said about participation, and I think that's a major consideration, and I wonder what Professor Clark would have thought when she wrote about Australian ballot during a pandemic. I mean, participation is really the goal here. So, but it's an unknown. So I don't know if we can, poll the electorate, or, is there a way to know? We don't know who's going to show up, and to have 15 people show up for a budget of this size would be a shame.
Rick? And then I'll come back to you, Andy.
As long as we were following the guidelines, I would attend. And I don't think that there's a question that we're not gonna follow the guidelines.
No, but then, trying to get everybody else. I mean, we have guidelines. When you go to the store, you're supposed to wear masks. And how many times do you go by a store and see people without them in quarantining and stuff? Andy, go, sir.
Dwight wondered what Susan Clark might say about participation in a pandemic, and I've been emailing her.
Oh.
I'm buying you all copies of her book, by the way. But she suggested representative town meeting, like Brattleboro.
So she doesn't
What it's
recommend a full meeting then?
How long is it going to take you, Andy, to set up districts and vote for your district representative?
Pick
And
people
Brattleboro is doing a virtual meeting.
But it's easier. You can do that. A virtual meeting is easier when you just have reps. It's like doing a school board meeting online or a select board. Just so you know, too, the Dover Select Board is intending to have a live meeting. Andy and I attended their last selectmen's meeting when they discussed it. And, I read you Wardsboro's letter. They're intending to do a live meeting also by postponing it. And Andy, I don't know, is the Dover Select Board decided, are they going to try to they're going to postpone it, right?
Yep.
Okay. But I think from what I'm hearing tonight, Mark, give me 1 second and then I'll hit you. I think that we're not going to make a decision tonight. I think that it's kind of split. I'd like some more information. I think, if Andy doesn't mind, I mean, we give him so much to do for this, but I think again, it's not a normal year, Andrew, and we'll try to really make your job easier next year. We're going to stamp out this pandemic now. We're going to be done with it. Then next year it'll just be a normal year so that you and Dr. B don't have as much to worry about, and neither do we as a board. So let's postpone the decision to at least the next meeting. And Andy and Dr. B, if you guys can attend our next meeting, which I'm not sure when it's going to be, but we'll let you know if you want to cut out early. We'll definitely make sure that Bill sends you the agenda again and the information. So unless you guys want to decide something different, I'd like to move on because we've been about an hour on this topic and we still got a lot of other things to do. Mark, and then Andy.
So just a reminder that a May 4th date doesn't give us time to warn and vote a budget before it has to be to the state.
Well, a May 4th date doesn't give us a revote.
A revote, yes, correct. Sorry, I misspoke. And just for the record, I don't understand why we're waiting. Things aren't going to change a whole lot. The new variants that are out there, Moderna doesn't know whether the South African version is going to be covered by their vaccine. So what we don't know is going to be the same in a week or 2 weeks or even a month that from what we do know now or what we don't know now. So I think we're just pushing off the inevitable.
Well, and Mark, if you want to make another motion, you can make all the motions you want. So, I mean, I don't think we're going anywhere. So that was the only reason I suggested we postpone it for a week or two. Again, if you'd like to make a motion, we will take it up.
I think we're split 50-50, so it doesn't make sense to waste time making another motion at this point.
It's kind of how I felt. That's why I thought maybe it'd be good to wait a couple of weeks. Andy, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You were next.
I was just waving by.
Okay. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you,
Dr.
Andy.
B.
Thanks,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Backus.
Bye.
And again, Mark, I'm not the end all be all. I mean, if the rest of the board wants to make a decision tonight, I'm good with that too. And if somebody wants to make a different motion, I'm good with that. I didn't feel like we were going to go anywhere. So I just, as a board chair, made a decision that we should probably move on. Again, it's your guys' meeting, so you tell me what you want to do. If somebody would like to make another motion, I'm all for voting. Seeing nothing, I think we'll move on if that's okay with everybody.
That's fine. I don't think anybody's changing their mind right now, Rich.
Okay. Laura, you want to just give us an update on the weighting recalculation implementation? And Mark, and like you talked and Rick too afterwards, just give us a brief VSBA update, and Rick, that the group update.
Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, so I testified. I introduced the bill in the House Education Committee and took a number of questions on it. In addition, in Senate Education, Senator Baruth has reintroduced his bill from last year, which is S13. He's no longer the chair of Senate Education. Senator Campion from Bennington County is. And so it appears that there may be some movement there to look at that, the difference between that bill and my bill, H54. Senator Baruth's bill asks for the educational establishment, the organizations, to come back and tell us how to implement the recommendations for the weighting study. And my bill says, here's how we should implement the recommendations for the weighting study. So stay tuned on that. In addition, there is a tax commission report that came out that, if folks haven't seen, looks at makes recommendations on a whole number of taxes, including a recommendation that the residential tax, education tax, be moved to a straight income tax, although many residential taxpayers do pay based on their income already. And there is discussion in the Ways and Means Committee around rather than implementing the weights and fixing the inequity for students and taxpayers by fixing the weights, that perhaps looking at categorical aid, which are grants, like the small schools grant has been floated. I think that manner of dealing with the issue is really political and not super stable. But I haven't seen language yet. So, Richard, I think that's all I have to say, unless there's some other additional info that you were looking for.
No, I'm sure that when you testified in front of House Ed, they all thought it was the greatest thing, and they were like tripping over each other to vote for it.
There actually, so I have to say that there are a number of legislators who understand that we have a problem. That the weighting study has identified a problem that has to be resolved. Now the question is, how will it be resolved? And so there were a number of actually very thoughtful questions in the House Education Committee. So And I had a member from the House Ways and Means Committee who used to be on the House Education Committee co-sponsored the bill with me. So I think there is more support than there has been for this. And I would note that Carolyn Partridge in our district, in our supervisory union, Kelly Paella in our supervisory union, also co-sponsored this, and John Gannon to our south also co-sponsored this.
Excellent, thank you. Is there any questions for Laura? Mark, does anything new happen with VSBA? I know you were trying to get, you and Dan had brought it up and they were gonna sit on it for a little bit, or?
Yeah, nothing new on that front. Dan and I push it at every meeting, and there's general consensus that something has to be done. I think at this point we're waiting for H54 and S13 to be introduced. And I imagine that at our meeting in a week or two, somebody, if not myself, will make a motion on how the board should move forward.
Is there anything we can do to help you with that? The motion that we supported?
Well, I think we already did that.
Yeah.
I think two
Do
meetings.
another one.
If letters are going to be written to anyone, copies of them that I could send to the VSBA to be shared would be helpful. But other than that, I think that there's going to be a lot of discussion on whether we do, what Laura is recommending, which is what I believe the only thing that makes sense. If anything, it's too slow in and of itself, versus a study to study the study, which is essentially what Senator Booth's bill is.
Study the study. Yes, we've done a lot of studying of studies.
Yes.
Not really done much for us. Any questions for Mark? Okay, and then Rick, you've been kind of dealing or talking with the Burlington people. Is there anything you want to give us an update on?
I guess one of the things we need to consider is whether we actually want to join this coalition of schools. So that's something we haven't discussed as a group in general, but I don't know how much more forthcoming or helpful I'm going to be if we're not a member of this particular coalition. So I don't know if we want to kick that around a little bit. Like I said, I think that in general, we are all a little better aware of what's going on with the weighting study than this particular group is, but I'm sure they'll get up to speed fairly quickly. I mean, they have engaged a lobbying group also, so they're kind of going on a different path than we are, but I think we should probably discuss whether we want to also throw our hat in the ring with their particular cause too. And I don't necessarily have a feeling one way or another. I don't know if it helps us or hurts us, but I think we should probably take a minute to discuss it and get everybody's opinion.
I tell you what, Rick, could we do that? Could you get like some information ahead of time, some background for everybody, and
Sure.
then maybe present it at the next meeting? And Peter, could you just make a note in the minutes that under old business at the next meeting, we will we should have a item to discuss the Burlington groups in for the weighting study, and then we'll be prepared to discuss that, Rick. And also, if you can check in, like joining the group, what does that mean? Is it a financial commitment? Is it a time commitment? Is it, what are we going to have to do that?
Well, it's really kind of unclear right now as to what the financial commitment is going to be. I think everybody's going to wind up at, it's some way to be determined in the future, paying for some of these lobbying costs. And I guess any other costs that are associated with it. So they had decided how that was going to, kind of sugar out, for lack of a better word. So, I'll get more information when I sit in on another meeting as to how that's going to move forward. But at this point in time, I would think we'd be kind of, if they did it on an FTE basis, we'd be kind of small potatoes compared to most of the other districts. as far as what our contribution would be.
Okay, go ahead, Mark.
So just for data reference points, the Marlboro school board has voted to contribute $500 to this Burlington Coalition, and another board, I don't remember which one, is contributing $3,000. I think it might be the Burlington group, but I'm not positive. So just a couple data points.
Thank you, Mark. That's good. Yes, Peter?
I believe from the last meeting in Marlboro, it is the Burlington group itself that's coming up with 3,000. And Bill Anton said that Marlboro's technical proportion would be more like 100 and the good vibes.
Cool. So I think that pretty much covers it unless anybody else has any questions or comments. Seeing none.
Right, Rich?
Yes, Mark.
I just do want to make just a quick comment. Whether the board is also, the coalition is also talking about taking on official members that aren't going to be financially contributing to the effort. So that's a possibility. But I think that we as a board should at least consider every avenue, participating in every avenue possible. So when we talk about it next time, well, I think we should talk about it.
No, then, but I just wanted to give Rick a chance to get up to speed and see what it was. And then if it's not really on the agenda, we have possible action on the implementation, but not to join a coalition. So I think I would feel a little uncomfortable us committing anything financially without it being warned.
Yeah, I wasn't making a motion. I wasn't recommending it. I was just kind of putting my vibes out there. All right, never mind. Go on.
Okay, thank you. So if we're done with that, we're going to go on to new business. AOE update on guidance on paying tuition to religious schools. And Bill, this is something you brought up at the executive committee meeting, and you just wanted it to be shared with principals of tuitioning towns because it's quite a bit different than some issues that I know we have in Dover dealt with in the past. And I think he said there were some other schools in Wyndham Central. So wherever Bill is, you want to weigh in?
Sure. So Vermont has some active lawsuits, and there are some active lawsuits around the country that revolve around tuition going to religious schools. The last determination by Vermont was, I believe, 1999. And those are going to be being re-looked at suits that are in play. And so the Agency of Education has provided updated guidance that will probably change as these lawsuits work their way through the courts. But their current guidance is on your agenda there. And essentially it just says that we should not reject paying tuition for a student to attend a primarily religious school as long as that school can attest that they are following the Vermont educational standards and that they are not using any of the tuition money for religious activities. And so I've met with all the two principals of River Valley, the principal of Marlboro, because in our SU, those are the ones that have tuitioning students. We will follow that guidance, and we will see how often that guidance changes over the next few years. But I wanted the board just to be aware.
Any questions for Bill? See a lot of head shaking. No.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Laura.
So is this advice given due to the fact that there are lawsuits in place? Is this temporary advice? Can you just characterize this advice from AOE?
It is because there are active lawsuits. And so in their participation in preparation for those active lawsuits, they have given us this guidance. And I do expect it to change. I don't know what the timeline would be on that.
So, Richard, I would like to ask the superintendent to update us every time that this new religious exemption is utilized. I think this is really important for us to keep track of and stay on top of. Can we do that?
Peter, can you just make a note, and that will, Bill, from now on in the in old business, it'll be just an action thing, you know, any updates, and if there is none, we'll just say there are none.
I can do that.
I have another question, Richard,
Okay.
and it may be for Bill. So is
On this
our, yes, on this topic. So is our lack of a statement on this, does that put us in any kind of legal obligation? You know, would it be better for us to make a statement about whether or not just about this, or because I would hate for us to passively endorse this.
I would just point to our attorney is saying that we must pay tuition to religiously affiliated
Okay,
schools.
got it. Sorry, excuse me. I thought it was AOE. Heard. Thank you.
You bet.
Anybody else? Everybody good? Okay. We're a little behind, but not bad. Lori, are you here? I don't see a Lori. Yes, I see a Lori. Lori, budget third look. So first thing is, on the operational budget, does anybody have, after, I think Lori just resent it out, does anybody have any questions on any items in the operational budget for Lori or for Bill or for Matt or for Tammy? And go ahead, Mark.
So, Lori, I'm guessing you can't answer this yet, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Part of the the new CARES Act, Carissa, whatever the hell they're calling it, excuse my French, is covering lost revenue from lunch programs. Do you anticipate that we're going to be able to recoup some of that money from that?
Yes. As soon as we receive more guidance, we will definitely go after all that we can. From the little bit that I understand, it's 55% of the difference of two numbers, right? So it's actually not a large amount of money in the end, but we will certainly go after it when we have the guidance and they open that up.
Was there anything else in the law that you see as being able to offset anything that we currently have in the budget or potentially offset?
So we can't offset things that are voted on, right? That's supplanting. So it's really about unanticipated costs, which we have just finished the round of the CRF money. And we've applied, we are just about to actually ask for reimbursement for that. And that was between 60 and, no, actually it was about $140,000 for River Valleys. And that comprised of, you know, the PPE and cleaning supplies and all of those things, as well as some tuition students that moved in that were unanticipated. So that was about 60,000 in itself. So we've gone ahead and applied for that. So that money is moved out of the budget and is what's creating part of that $184,000 surplus that we're looking at. But as far as the Carissa funds, it's exactly what everybody's calling it. So you were right on there. That money will come down at some point. I would say probably in the next month. And that will go towards recovery efforts. So, it's not something that's in your budget that we can take out and pay for it with these funds. It really needs to be things that are unanticipated costs to you.
Okay. And last question, you may have answered this before, and if you have, I apologize. Have we applied for any ESSER 1 funds yet?
As a matter of fact, I'm ready to sit down and do the application process next week. And so the principals are coming up with a plan on how to use their portion of the funds for that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
So does anybody have questions on the operating budget for next year, the one that we're going to try to present to voters somehow, some way in the near future, distant future? So everybody's good with the operating budget as it is for now.
Is that a question, Rich?
Go ahead, Dwight.
Is regarding transportation? I noticed that the actual went down, I believe, and then we budgeted the current. That's kind of the same amount that we had used. Is that due to COVID, or did we make some changes in that area that reduced our transportation budget?
Yes, I recalibrated the transportation for secondary. It was really from Wardsboro's piece of sending students to Leland and Gray, and they pay part of the assessment for the transportation company to do that. And because there's been a drop of students going over to Leland and Gray, I recalibrated that. So that was where the reduction came in.
And you say recalibrated, is there just fewer buses going, or what's exactly?
I think there's still 2 buses, but there's a lot less students. And the way I calibrate it is by ADM. It would be hard to do it by bus, so.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure.
That's all I have, Rich.
Okay. If there's nothing else, then I will say that the operating budget for now we're comfortable with. The next thing we'd asked Lori to look at for us was capital budget funds. So Lori, I don't remember seeing that. Did we get what we have in each of the funds?
Yes, on the document that I sent, there was the general fund, i.e. also reserve fund in there. And then I did add the capital fund, which was the $300,000 that we discussed last time.
Okay.
So I have fiscal year 20 summary general fund balance that's unrestricted. And then underneath I added fiscal year 20 summary capital fund balance, which is a committed fund.
Okay, does anybody have any questions on the capital funds? Go ahead, Mark.
Can you just remind me what the split was between building fund and transportation fund?
Yes, 2 and 1.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Lori, I'm really sorry. I feel like I don't know, fish out of water. Whereabouts is that?
Right after the items for discussion page.
Items for discussion. Okay.
On the next page.
Next page. Yeah. Summary capital fund balance committed.
There you go.
Okay, but I thought we were going to get, I know we have a transportation fund, we have a building fund, we have an equipment fund. And we put money away last year in each of those accounts. Do we have that somewhere?
That's the 300,000. That's what you voted to move to a capital fund, which includes all of those things.
I was looking for how much is in the building, how much is in transportation, how much is in equipment.
Just 200 in building and 100 in transportation was how you had it broken out last year. I didn't have anything for equipment specifically.
Okay, I can't, I'll have to, I thought we set up 4 reserve funds.
I'll have to go back and look
School
at the
district
minutes, but I only remember the reserve and then the capital, which the capital was broken out into 2.
Okay. So for capital budget funds, you have for under discussion, you have some capital items that you want us to discuss.
Right, so the capital items were things that Chris Medina pulled off of the capital needs assessment. And I broke those out. Laura had asked for the web design to be an item for discussion. And then the yearly projects, and then the 167,000 are, the larger projects, obviously.
Okay, did everybody get to see that in the packet that Lori sent out? Is there any? Go ahead, Rick.
I said, I saw it,
Okay.
went through it.
Is
I
there any?
probably go to the administrators to see what we think needs to get done next year. Or in their opinion.
Yeah, so I guess though I'm a little confused, Lori, because we used to have a capital budget that showed like transportation, and that we would put 20,000 a year away, and in year 10 we bought a bus, and that cost 100,000. So the fund went down and up. So I'm not sure what these are asking for. So it says add a line item for 167.9 for the following capital needs, but we have $200,000 put away for that. So are you saying that we want to fund $167,900 for these, or are you going to put 20 in the reserve fund, 20,000, but take 167 out? That's I guess where my confusion is.
Okay, sure. So all of those things on that page were pulled off of the capital needs assessment. There is not a plan to pay for them yet. That's why they're up for discussion as part of the capital needs plan. So they're not in the budget. They're not in the general budget to move any money to the capital fund to fund any of these. There is money in the capital fund that you could use to do some of these items. Does that help at all?
Well, like you have transportation bus replacement, 25,000. That's not going to buy us a bus. So is that we're putting 25,000 away so we can buy a bus?
No, does the board want to add to the general fund to $25,000 to put away for the bus? Right now, there's $100,000 in transportation that could be used for a bus replacement. These are pulled off of that capital needs report as part of the for both buildings that was done a few years back.
Okay, so in that reserve fund study that we did, and I don't have it in front of me, it showed that, you know, this should be done, we should be putting so much away because it's gonna cost X number of dollars to do this project. And they recommended that we do that project, you know, around this year. So are all these items for this year in the reserve that said that this year we should be doing this stuff?
I believe that it is for this year. It could even be for last year if things didn't get done. I would have to go back and check Chris's notes as to what year, because you're right, you're absolutely right, Rich, is that there were things laid out per year that should be done. I'm not sure if maybe Matt, do you have that capital needs study handy or not?
I'm pretty sure I could put my hands on it. It's not right in front of me, but if you give me a few minutes, I might be able to find it.
Okay, well, if the board's okay with this, on the capital items, let me work with Lori and Matt and Tammy and just let's give something a little different presentation on this. But I think Rick asked Matt and Tammy, there's a total of 10 items. How important are these 10 items to be done next year? And I don't know if you want to go through them one at a time. So Matt, asphalt seal coating at Dover Elementary School.
We just had this done a few years ago, so I don't think there are major problems. I think the staff parking lot could probably use a recoat, but the town came through and did the major access to the school 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay, so this would be for the staff parking lot.
Could be.
Okay. And how about the paint, exterior paint at the school? And is this number to have somebody paint it, or is this to have just for the materials, or is this labor and materials?
This does not reflect a quote that I'm aware of. I suspect this is to put money away toward this project, but Lori, you may know better.
No, that's correct, Matt. These are all figures that to put away towards these or to use the capital fund to do them.
Okay, so what
know,
needs to be, out of this list, what needs to be done next year? Maybe that's the easier way to do it.
I have to get that report. So
then let's table this and let's come back to this next meeting.
Yeah.
So
I think these were the next year's this year's projects that were in that capital needs.
That didn't
if I
get
remember
done this year.
correctly. Correct.
Okay.
If I remember correctly from Chris's explanation.
And like a reserve study gives you an estimate. So like if they said the roof should be replaced, you know, does the roof really need to be replaced now? Or can we get another year out of it? So that's, I think, what we need to do. Go ahead, Mark.
Sorry, my mute button didn't want to work. Last year when we were working on the budget, we chose not to put, I think maybe all of these in, just as a reminder.
Yeah, that was my question mark, because I don't remember, because like, I don't know, why do we need to replace the tractor? Is it something that needs to be replaced now? Are we having a lot of breakdowns? Does it not work? Or is it just that, hey, it's 5 years old, let's buy a tractor because it's 5 years old? So that's the only thing I was looking for. So I think if everybody in the board is good, why don't we just hold off on doing this, and let me do a little research and bring something back to the board.
Rich, Laura's hand is up.
Oh, hi, Laura. And then Dwight.
Hey, Richard, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I just wanted to note when we're looking, I know we've mentioned a couple of times about the numbers, the increase that we're looking at this year in the budget, which, and this is still a working document with decisions still to be made, but I believe that we are looking at right now about a $357,000 increase prior to us making any other decisions. And I'll invite Lori to stop me if I say something in error, of course. And I think it's helpful just in terms of our general understanding to point out that we have a pretty significant increase in in secondary education next year to the tune of about $300,000. Just reminding ourselves that when we have increases in student populations in our buildings, that brings revenue into our existing programs, into our building programs. And when we have increases in secondary students, that increases our expense because we don't run secondary institutions, we don't run high schools. And so when our secondary population increases, there's no revenue. That's just a cost that has to go out. It's not, so that's all. I thought it would be helpful to maybe point that out, and just, since those numbers are pretty close.
Okay,
A question too.
go ahead.
Oh, thanks. So for Lori, for the general fund balance, so what you're showing, correct me if I'm wrong, so we started out with 360, we funded the operating, right, with the pay down, but we still came out, so our ending balance is 260, is that correct? So
Correct.
So also in the operating budget, you've also budgeted for an additional 200,000 for this year for another buy down for the next
right.
year. Does that mean if we have a level budget, we would be down to 60,000 next year?
That's correct.
So Rich, isn't that something that, first of all, we need to vote on, whether or not we need to make that move into the operating budget?
Oh,
No, the voters vote on it, Dwight.
Okay.
But
Well, we
I
have to
think,
get the vote.
can I just,
yeah, I
Go
know,
ahead.
he's off because it's last year you're looking at.
yeah, I wanted to
It's only
clarify.
100, she's only saying that right now we're gonna have about 160,000 that we could, that in.
260, we'll have 260 at the end of the fiscal year. And if, what I'm saying, if we have a level budget next year as well with the buy down, then we would have 60 at the end of the year.
That, the 260 is the FY20, that's over.
Right, that's what we have now.
Yeah, we committed 200 of that to this year. That's still in play.
In play, right.
So she feels like right now that it's going to be about 160, but we don't know for sure yet, Dwight. Like Mark was asking earlier, there's other grants that Lori's looking at.
Right.
That we may bring some money in, so that could go up. But if we don't get the grants, it may be the same. So we don't know what that number is yet, and that number the voters get to vote on whether or not because
right, but we have to establish, we make a warning to do that, don't we?
Right, and we're not there yet. That's why
Okay.
How we budget is the first thing we do is we come up with the operating budget that meets all our requirements, the fairness and equity and in our mission statement and all that stuff, which we kind of agreed to. We like the budget where it is. Then look at the capital stuff, which we are now, and then we're going to look at how it affects the tax rates, and then we have to make a decision, is that what we want to present to the board? And then we have a bunch of articles, because remember, we have to, Lori's using the Burton tuition, so she put in her letter to us that she adjusted that, so that brought that number down a little bit. And we also so then we don't know what the yield's going to be. Lori's still arguing with the state over our equalized pupils. If she gets us more pupils, that's going to make the cost go up. So that tax rate still is in flux. Plus, the legislature hasn't determined a yield yet. There's a recommended yield through a letter that went out from from the tax department to the Speaker of the House and the Senate pro tem. But again, that's not voted on by the legislature. So this tax rate can move. Remember, 2 years ago, we were looking at a huge tax increase, and by the time everything's figured out and we got closer, you know, the numbers were quite a bit different. So that's why we don't get too nervous about tax rate yet. And that's what.
I'm not asking about the tax rate. I'm just trying to get a handle on the reserve balance and where we're gonna land at the end of the fiscal year.
Well, we don't know, but she's, you know, putting it at 160.
Yeah. So is there a way we can get like kind of a year to year kind of, rather than just where we are now, how that fund balance has changed over the last several years?
Sure. Just to clarify, Rich did a really great job just explaining that about the tax rate. What I'm saying in the document is that at the end of fiscal year 21, there will be 60,000 in reserves. But I'm saying that you also are going to have a surplus this year, fiscal year 21, that will add to that. And
Okay.
so that's where the recommendation of adding potentially $100,000 to revenues to drop the tax rate came from. But that's how it flowed through. But I presented before to all of you, basically, you know, what the two districts brought in and that type of thing. And then we had some audit issues. So I can go back and do that again if that's what you're asking.
I mean, it seems like it's obviously a moving target right now. We don't know what the fund balance is going to be at the end of the fiscal year. Is that pretty much, I get that right?
At the end of 20.
So
right.
Okay. So when will we get a clearer picture, I guess?
At the end of the fiscal year.
At the end of the fiscal year, right.
Actually, your truest picture is after an audit. So we haven't actually received the fiscal year 20 audit yet. So it's, you know, but we can make a pretty good determination after the fiscal year has ended. And I just wanted to, if it's okay with Rich, I just wanted to add one other, you know, you did a great job explaining all of the tax rate. There was just one thing I wanted to point out that I didn't point out in my email, if that's okay, Rich, about the tax rate, just a comparison. He's absolutely right. We have a lot more numbers to come. I was hoping today we would get the new equalized pupil numbers, because I do believe that will have a major impact on this first look at the tax rate. But I wanted to point out so that everybody is just aware of, based on the yield changing from last year to this year, and based on your both of your CLAs in your towns went down. So Dover's tax rate, as I put in the document, would be 9 cents less had those two things not happened. Okay. And Wardsboro's would be 12 cents less. So things that you have no control over as far as the yield and the CLA. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that those two items are playing a big piece in this puzzle as well. So
And the CLA is set. That's not going to change because I don't think either town has appealed it.
right. Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, so Dover went from 101, from 102 to 101, so it's a drop of 1%. And Wardsboro, you guys dropped like 3.32%. Go ahead, Mark.
So I had two questions, but I think you just answered one, that the CLA is not going to change at this point. The other one is in regards to reserve funds, not ours in particular, but is there a, I know if you're talking about, you know, building boards and things like that, their insurance agencies set a certain amount that you need to have in reserves. Is there a general rule of thumb for what we should have in reserves?
Well, there's nothing by law that says what you should have, but I believe at least a minimum of 5%. should be in reserves because of the exact thing that happened to you this year of 23 students moving in. Right? So we were able to offset some of that cost two ways. One, because we did get some money from grants from the CRF funds because of the students moving in. And then the other way is that we had some phantom students built in, and also I had budgeted at higher rates. So those two things actually mitigated that loss. So your fund balance or the end of the year for this year would have been a lot less had those two things not happened. And but if you had had something in reserves, it would have covered it. So.
And we don't have those two things for fiscal year 22 going
Correct.
forward.
Right. You won't have the, unless, something happens where more students move in and they allow that in CRF funding if they open that potentially. But at this point right now, no.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
don't forget too that one of the things that we've done in the past is if the budget's been really tight, then we budgeted a lot tighter, because remember, it's not what you budget, what you actually spend, it's going to kill you. And like Lori said, if we were looking at a flat tax rate, then we would just, we'd add a couple students in high school and we would budget a round number, like whatever we budget, say we budgeted 18.5 or 18.2, we may budget 18.5. When we knew the budget, there was going to be some bigger increases, then we got more actual and closer to the budget. And that's, like I said, in the past, I mean, we've made recommendations at town meeting, at least on the Dover side, we just found out insurance is going to drop. So, we ask you to knock $2,000 off in the budget and ask for an amendment. So it really is a moving target. And that's a big reason to also move, we mentioned at the meeting last year, if we move off the actual vote, that gives us time to get more firm numbers. And I feel really bad for districts that, have to vote before town meeting because it's, they're working with numbers they don't know. And you don't have a clue what that actual vote's going to do to your tax rates or to what you have to pay. And that was one of the arguments with Act 1668 is you're voting for something you don't know what it's going to cost you. Yes, Andrew.
So Lori's 2 points about the yield and the CLAs are exactly the kind of a thing that you want, that would be mentioned in a floor vote. But I just wanted to emphasize, if you don't do a floor vote, make sure you mention her 2 points in whatever education and outreach you do. The informational meetings, but hopefully more outreach as well, because those are excellent points when you start looking at those numbers and you see, gosh, 9 cents on uncontrol, completely factors out of your control. Thank you, Lori.
And again, that is something that we've always, told people in the past, and that's the other reason why we try to keep the fund balance so that we could help buy down that or move that rate around. But we also knew that the fund balance was not going to be something that we were going to be able to live off of forever, and eventually it was going to end. And the other point too is last year we artificially brought the rate down with 200,000, which was probably would have been an increase, Lori, of 10 cents then, 12 cents. So we artificially, so if there's a 40-cent increase this year, but we artificially brought it down 12 cents last year, it's not the full 40-cent increase. We bought it down the year before. And I think we've been upfront. I know Wardsboro, you've done that before we were River Valleys too. So that's something else, Andy, that it's going to be tough. But I think, Lori, if you get it, it came with maybe the agenda. And if not, we should send you the booklet that we're proposing to send out. And Lori does talk about that very, very well, showing that in the tax rate page. Let's go back to Lori's other thing, and Laura had brought it up, is on top of the capital, which we'll work on for next meeting. There's a proposal for $30,000 to do update the website design and maintenance. I know, Mark, we've run you through the hoops on this one several times. You've done a couple RFPs and you've talked to people, and then we keep like, wow, that's a lot of money. So we can add 30,000 for website design and maintenance. Is that something, is this the year to do that? And also, if we do that, is that something we want to just put in the budget, or do we want to add that as an extra article? And again, going back to Andy's points, if it's just an article, it's a little harder. If we vote on it, it'll be a little harder. So we really have to work on how we're going to sell that in this booklet. So I guess the first question is, what do y'all think about the website design and maintenance and adding $30,000 into the budget? Yes, Mark.
Well, first of all, it's not an upgrade or change. We currently don't have a website. In fact, it's still pointed towards the one that Anita had put together that hasn't been updated in well over a year. As we could probably get away with a smaller number. We could get something online for 15,000, 20,000. It's not going to give us the backbone for the growth and additional services that we may want to add down the road, though. What, Lori or Rich, what is $30,000 on our tax rate?
2 cents roughly.
Okay.
But again, it depends on the yield, and don't also remember too that we're going to probably be in the penalty box.
We also have to keep in mind that the RFPs are now a year old. So we're not going to be able to go with those numbers. We're going to have to put another RFP out to get updated proposals.
I would, but I'd say let's put some money aside instead of wasting people's time with another RFP, because I think eventually people are going to say, yeah, I don't really want to spend any time bidding on that because this is the third time they've asked for it and they haven't done anything. So let's just say then let's make the discussion, Mark, if it's okay with you and everybody, let's just make the discussion. Do we want to put a sum of money in for website design and maintenance?
All right, Rich?
Yeah, then go ahead.
For the purpose of discussion, I'm going to move that we add $30,000 to the budget for website design and maintenance.
Okay. So Mark made a motion. Is there a second to Mark's motion?
Kate seconds the motion.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second. So Mark, go ahead. You get to discuss it first.
This is a hard one. I think it's something that we need. We need a way to bring people into our schools, and the website is a big part of that. But we're looking at a huge increase in taxes. So I'd like to hear what other people think.
Okay. Then just Kate, before I go to you, can you read the motion back, Peter?
Yes, move to that $30,000 be added to the budget for website design and maintenance.
Okay. Kate, go ahead.
I think that we talked about it last year. I think the business need for it is real and it does exist. And I think investing the money in it so it's a platform that isn't just build something cheap that nobody knows how to maintain. I think having something that has a maintenance plan and has things involved makes a lot more sense for both a current parent communication plan, but then also to let new students know new potential families know what the schools are about. I think that's a great asset to the communities in both towns.
Thank you, Kate. Anybody else want to weigh in? Dwight, you're moving.
I'm moving. You see me moving?
I do.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know from the principals. I understand, this. I think it sounds like if we had this all built prior to COVID, maybe it would have been a lot more help for the remote learning. I certainly understand the benefit for attracting students. I think that would be a help. So, based on what the learning environment is, maybe we can adjust. Do we need it, in other words, or do we make do with what we had from the learning platforms, or how much would it help in that regard? So I'd like to ask our principals if they could weigh in a little bit on it.
Can I just weigh in on that for a second, Rich?
Yeah, is that okay, Dwight?
Sure.
The RFP that we had put out would not have affected remote learning. It wouldn't have affected remote learning had we had it. It might have organized it a little bit, but it wasn't a platform that would have used.
Yeah, maybe not so much remote learning as the communication that Kate was talking about with parents and more interactive stuff. I mean, again, I don't know exactly what the needs are of the school, so I'll defer.
Matt, can you and Tammy kind of weigh in on the needs of the schools and what this does, and would it have helped? And I think kind of answer Dwight's questions on what Mark answered.
Go ahead, Tammy.
I mean, I guess it really depends on what is our main goal in developing the website. Is it for marketing purposes, or is it really as a communication tool that we're going to be getting communication out to the existing families? So that's my take on it. But I mean, I think a new website would be beneficial. Absolutely. Is this the year to put it in? That's for all of us to decide, I guess.
Mark, because you've been so involved in this, why don't you answer Tammy's question? Is it for marketing? Is it for communication? What is it for? I don't recall the RFP.
Both. The way we put the RFP out, it would have been useful it would be useful for both communicating with current families, the community, as well as outreach. So both.
Okay, Laura, let me go at first and I'll come back to you. I see you got your hand up again. Matthew, I love the shirt, buddy.
Thanks. Got this for Christmas from my wife.
It looks like you're ready to go out and start tapping some trees.
I'm channeling my inner extra sharp cheddar. So just a couple things. We use it for, as Tammy said, for all those things, for communication and for getting information to students, for organizing resources for families. I think I only see maybe one or two of our families on. It's too bad. I think we lost a few a while ago, but I'd love to hear from them what they use it for most, because I think that would be good study. Also, we use the Swift Outreach, which is the piece in Power School that allows us to communicate things instantly to people's phones, surveys, documents, things go right to the text messages of parents. And I think they value that. It also goes to email. And then just jumping on what Laura said, it's kind of a catch-22, right? So we attracted people and now we have this $300,000 unexpected secondary tuition cost. And it takes a couple years maybe for that rolling average to come back around. But I'll say in favor of the families that we have attracted, they really have added significant diversity and experience and just really joy to the school. So I really appreciate that. I know it's creating a problem financially, but I just wanted to say that it's really been nice to have the additional families and what they bring to the school.
And Matt, you had the moves there. I like that.
Moves?
Yeah, when you were rocking and rolling there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Italian, half.
Laura, go ahead.
Yes, just really quickly to follow up on Matt's comments, I do not want to give anyone the impression that more students are bad for Dover. In fact, more students are good for Dover for all sorts of reasons. But it does take, as Matt indicated, a year or two to catch up to that. And you can get a shock when you get a large increase outside of your building.
It's not a problem, but it does create challenges, I think would be a good way to put it.
Yeah. And Rich, I don't think I just want to be clear. I don't think we're 100% clear on where we're at right now with our budget. I mean, we're talking about what we're going to do, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of variables still in play here.
Yeah, I think that's what Lauren and I were discussing earlier, because we don't even know where we stand with reserves.
So,
I don't think with surpluses.
I don't think we should set the siren off just yet, but I mean, noting that we may need to set the siren off, I think appropriate. With regard to the website, here's what I would like to say. We have a new district. We have no website. It is that this is how people seek information. Local people, people from away. It's how parents are able to stay connected, and it's really important that we make progress at a minimum on this year. And so, if nothing else, I would like to see us start a reserve for doing this in next year, and maybe exploring the opportunity to put something together where we're building, kind of components, right? So some basic structures that can be added to in the next couple of years. So stage out some work on this. But I do think that it's not a question of should we or shouldn't we. It's a question of, when do we do it? And we should have done it already. This is just, it's modern life. People find information about their town, about their schools, online. So.
Okay. Anybody else who hasn't spoken to the topic? The only thing I'd like to say is I have no issue putting it in there, but again, because it is a year that we are looking at some increases, I would really feel comfortable with this being a special article. So I would ask that you maybe vote this motion down, but that we put this in as an article to be voted on. And then that way the public does get to weigh in. But go ahead, Mark.
Why don't we just amend it? I take a friendly amendment.
Well, I won't make a friendly amendment, but it's I usually don't make amendments or motions, only very, very rarely if it's for PR type of stuff. I'm just throwing that out. And again, I don't know what y'all think, but again, if you have a live meeting, it's a special article, you'll see how much you want to use it, and it will kind of answer Matt's questions that he had, I think. But if it's going to be by ballot too, it's an all or nothing, and you don't know, maybe they thought we should do more, maybe they thought it's Richard, a little harder. But Mark, you had the floor. Go ahead.
I made the motion as I made it on purpose, with my belief that we need to have an Australian ballot town meeting. But I would accept a friendly amendment if somebody wants to make it.
Okay, Laura,
So, is there any reason, do we have to vote on this tonight, or can we also put this, so I'd like to put this off until we get more information. So Lori's going to come back with some information about equalized pupils, and we're going to have some information from Andy about, possibly delaying the meeting. So I'd like to just not vote on this tonight. I'm going to vote no because of that reason.
We either have to vote, or Mark and Kate can withdraw their motion in second, and then we don't have to vote.
It's fine either way with me. I'm going to vote no, and that is the reason why I'm going to vote no. I might vote yes on that at a later date.
And I do not want to withdraw the motion. I think that we should be moving forward with things with the information we have.
Cool. So are you all ready to vote? I don't see much of any movement. Dwight's moving a little bit. Okay. Mark's shaking his head. Mark, it's your motion. I'm going to move it forward. Since I hear nothing, no objections to that. The motion is to add $30,000 to the budget for website design and maintenance. All those in favor, please signify so by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, all those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Okay, I messed this up last time, but I think it was pretty obvious. I am going to ask for a roll call vote. I think I've got a 3-2 vote again. Mark, how do you vote?
Yay.
Kate?
Yay.
Dwight?
Yay.
Rick, you're next on my list.
Nay.
Laura?
Nay.
Oh, you guys are gonna hate me.
Killing us.
I'm going to vote to create a tie to push it off. I'm not against it.
You're gonna be the equalizer, Rich. You're gonna be known as the big equalizer.
Yeah, I'm not against it, but I agree that I may want to see it done differently. I may want to see it as an article. I think too, deciding how we're going to meet will make a difference. So I am voting. I'm going to. And you guys got to make it easier on me. I've never voted twice in a meeting in my life.
Democracy, baby.
So moving forward, is there any other items on the budget? So I think, Lori, you and I and the administrators have a little bit of work to do. Go ahead, Mark.
I'm not sure if the budget's the appropriate place to bring this up, and I meant to ask for it to be added to the agenda, but I think it is past time that we put new signs in front of our schools.
Okay, why don't you hold that? Let's finish the budget so we can let Lori go.
Okay.
If you're okay with that, Mark, and then you can bring that up in a minute. So just on the budget, so I don't hold Lori, because she told me that she turns into a pumpkin at 9:10. So we don't want to see that transformation. But you got a great smile, Lori. You'd be a great pumpkin. So is there any more questions on the budget for right now?
Rich, I don't know how germane this is, and you've made this point before several other times, but going back to the budget and the vote, and it's just one last plug from me. Remember that if our budget gets voted down and we get just the percentage for next year, that all of that money comes out of the elementary school in our case. And that's really a big deal. I don't know as if everybody knows what type of magnitude that has on what we would be able to spend next year should our budget fail to go through. All the money that's going to secondary is going to secondary no matter what. So if there are any cuts that need to be made, they're all going to come out of the elementary school budget. And that could be really devastating for our two elementary schools. That's my point. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Rick.
Okay. So I think if there's nothing else, Lori, I am sorry that we kept you so late. Please don't blame us. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's difficult times, but we appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you, Lori.
You're welcome, and we'll work together on the capital plan then.
Yeah, last week was a really tough week for us over in the valley. Ask Dwight. He's gonna look like me soon. He's gonna have less hair. Mark is getting there. Mark is gonna be close. Thank you, Lori.
All right, thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Okay. Mark, the sign issue, why don't we, if you're okay, I think it's a good topic. So you want to have new signs made up or different signs or?
Yeah, I have no problem. I have a feeling you're going to ask whether we can put this on the agenda for the next meeting. Oh, okay. My proposal would be to ask, and I actually meant to speak to them before this meeting, so I don't want to put them on the spot, but I was going to ask Tammy and Matt whether they felt that the upper grades in the schools could design a sign for us. And that aside from that I think the signs should be very similar with the exception of the word Wardsboro and Dover. Wardsboro should say STEAM School. It's right on 100. It's good advertising. And Dover should say IB. It's on, the whatever Dover Road is called there, which gets a fair amount of traffic.
Hey, Matt and Tammy, is that something you could maybe do a little research for us and bring up at our next meeting to have a discussion? Thank you, Matt. Tammy, you good with that?
Sounds fine to me.
Okay.
Thank you both.
Also, if you can maybe if you have an idea, like if we're going to do something, what the costs are, so we can maybe make a decision. And I know when we first became a district, we talked about, would the Wardsboro and Dover signs come down and how that would all work. So maybe just refresh our memory for us at the next meeting too, if you could. What do those buses say now, Matt? Do they still say Dover School?
Yeah, we haven't changed the buses.
Okay. But I'd rather spend the money on education than making the buses. But it depends what it is. So
the new bus will have the right sign on it.
Right. Well, that makes sense too. Yeah, let's change the sign so we can trade the bus in 3 months. So I've done things like that before. So if you guys have nothing else, Kate, anything else? You all good? Nothing. Okay. Dwight? Mark?
Just it's early, but the policy committee will meet February 12th at 9 a.m. over Zoom.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Rick, you got anything?
No, I'm all good. Thank you.
Laura?
I just want to say thank you, Richard, for all the extra time that you are putting in still after all of these years for our students and our taxpayers and all of us. And Tammy and Matt, thank you. And please pass on our thanks to all.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, so in February, we got another quandary. The 15th, I believe, is President's Day, so that is a holiday. Matt, shake your head for me if it is. Okay. We just met this week, which is the 25th. If we meet the 1st and 3rd, obviously the 3rd one's a holiday. The 1st is only a week away. Are you guys okay meeting the 8th and the 22nd? Okay, Dwight, you're good. Kate, does that work for you? Rick, you're good. Mark? Okay, 1 second. Laura, while Mark's giving a second of time, you all good with those 2 dates?
Yes.
Matt and Tammy, are you guys good?
I can make those dates.
Okay. Mark, you're good? I should have asked Lori before she left, but I think that puts them off of the River Valley schedule. And when I looked at the earlier schedule of when things had to be done, I think River Valley, West River needs to get their budget done before that. Bill, you're there. Are those dates okay with you and Lori?
8th and the 22nd.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lori, it will be gone on the 22nd, but she'll be available on the 8th.
Okay. And would that be okay for you? Because then what we would have to do is swap. On the 8th, we'd spend on the budget. And the 22nd, we could do more of the, when you do your reporting and stuff.
Yeah, I can make those work.
Okay, so Peter, our next two meetings will be the 8th and the 22nd. Hopefully that works for you too, sir.
I'll make it work. Time of evening, 6?
6 again, right, guys? Mark, are you going to send this? Who's sending this to the TV people?
It's my account. So I believe when Mark, if he recorded it to the cloud, it'll go to my account and I can BCTV. If he recorded it to his hard drive, then he'll need to send it to Rich.
It's should be in your cloud account. So it's all you, Bill.
So I'll just send it to Rich. It'll be done 10 minutes after this meeting.
Okay. So I need the motion that I will agree with, and I promise not to make a tie. Go ahead, Kate.
May I motion to adjourn at 9:16 p.m.?
Excellent motion.
Excellent motion.
You put one to sleep, by the way. Nice work.
Don't forget, I still trade for a puppy. Okay, guys, we're all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank
We
you,
will
Rich.
talk to you all in a couple weeks. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks,
night, all.
everybody. Good night.
Bye, everyone. Good night,
Thank you.
everyone.